Okay, so welcome to Death Valley, Florida, where it's 100 degrees and we got nothing better to do than to work on the suspension on this car. So what I want to do is I want to show you guys, I know I mentioned this a couple of videos ago, of kind of showing you how to figure out what your instant center is and what your anti-squat percentage is and all that. And I want to go ahead and just go through it with you guys and show you my initial settings, what I'm going to go with on this car. They're a little bit different than they were before, just because we lowered the car a little bit, okay? The front end, I haven't really done anything to. I'm keeping it pretty much a little bit higher. As you can see, it's a touch higher than the rear. I may change that a little bit just because of the fact of if we start getting it to hook really good, I don't really need the front end up in the air like that. So, you know, that we have room to come down a little bit on that. So, but anyway, let me grab a tape measure and we'll go under the car and I'll show you kind of what we're gonna measure. Okay, so let me get my flashlight here. So what you wanna do is you wanna measure the length of your upper control arm, okay? You wanna measure the length of your lower control arm. And then you wanna measure from the ground to the center of your bolt, okay, to the back of the upper control arm. So you measure from there to the ground, okay? Both sides, just try to get an average, you know, they're probably gonna be pretty close to the same. And then you measure from the ground to the center of the bolt in the front of the control arm, the upper. And then the same thing with the lowers. You're gonna measure from the, you know, the center of the bolt to the ground, center of the bolt to the ground. So yeah, it's pretty simple. You just wanna get those measurements, write them down, which I've already done. So let's go on the computer and I'll show you how to check what your instant center is. I use the one everybody else uses, the baseline suspension. So let's go take a look at that. All right, so we're on the computer right now and hopefully y'all can see this. I'm trying to kind of get the camera on it good. Anyway, yeah, this is the baseline suspensions website and you just, all those measurements I was telling you are all right here, okay? So I have the everything written down on a piece of paper here. So we're just gonna plug them in. The length of my upper control arm from center of the bolt to the center of the bolt is 8.75 inches. The lower one is 18 inches, okay? Okay, from the rear of the upper control arm, bolt height is 16.75, and the front is 15.5. The rear lower control arm bolt height is 8.25. The front is, it was 9 inches. And as far as the weight goes, I kind of guessed. I'm guessing my car weighs around 2,400 pounds, maybe 2,500 pounds with me in it. But I did mess around with these weights and it didn't really change much the instant center, okay? So the other thing is the center of gravity height or the camshaft height. So I kind of had to guess on that because obviously, you know, it's a 2JZ, so the camshafts are on the top of the engine. So the baseline calculator goes off of like a V8, where the camshaft is going to be below the head, so you got some weight above it. Whereas with the 2JZ, there's no weight above the camshaft, so I'm not going to put that number in there. So I kind of went off an average of around 18 inches. So when you hit calculate, I've already done it, but I'll hit it again. So yeah, it's 123.8%, which is pretty good. That's a good baseline setting, okay? So I also wanted to show you, and also the instant center length is around 46. And then I'll go into a little bit more on that as far as the length of your instant center in just a second. But what I wanted to show you guys is, on my car, I have adjustable lowers in the rear, okay? So let's say I went ahead and lowered the rear control arm, you know, the one that's furthest to the rear on the housing. let's say I lowered this 1 inch. So let's go to 7.25 and then we hit calculate. Let's see what that does to our anti-squat. Okay, it changed it to 157% anti-squat. So as you can see, it changes it a lot by moving the lower control arm in the rear. Okay, when you lower it down, it changes your instant center a lot, or your anti-squat rather. And it also shortens, okay, shortens your instant center length and increases your anti-squat value. Okay, so that is a very sensitive measurement. Okay, so let's put this back at where it is now, which is 8.25, which is gonna bring it back to 100 and whatever it was, 27% anti-squat. Yeah, 123. And then it's gonna lengthen our instant center, okay, out to 46 inches, where the other one was like 30 something, okay? So let's go back out in the garage and I'll kind of explain kind of what this means. Okay, like I said, right now we have it set at 120, what was it? 123% anti-squat, which means 100% means that it neither squats nor separates, okay? Neither one. So if you're at 100%, then it just stays right there, okay? Anything over 100%, you're gonna separate. Anything below 100%, and you're gonna squat, okay? So that's one thing. So right now we're at 123%, so it should theoretically separate, okay? Now, I have not really checked, I checked the pinion angle briefly, and it's right around 4 degrees down, which I'm gonna bring that back up to about 3 degrees down, okay? So that just, all you gotta do there is lengthen the upper control arm a little bit and it'll bring your pinion up a little bit. So, but you don't wanna go too much more than like between 2 and 4 negative on your pinion angle. That's pretty much what's recommended. So I'm gonna try to go with 3, right, stay in the middle. So anyway, let me show you the bolt I was talking about, the lower control arm here. So like I said, if I was to move this bolt down here, which is another inch, okay, that's an inch, this is a 1/2 inch. So if I go to this hole, that's gonna take this from 123% anti-squat to 157% anti-squat, just moving it an inch. Okay, so you can tell like up here is where factory is, like this hole up here is where the factory setting is. So we're almost, I don't know, close to 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches down. Maybe 2 inches, that might be 2 inches, I'm not sure. But anyway, you get the point. Moving this arm down really increases your anti-squat, okay? So that's why it's important that you move your bars. I have the uppers as far down as it can go, okay? Now, as far as what happens if I were to do that and make it 150% anti-squat and shorten the instant center, which means basically the instant center is where if you take an imaginary line and you draw it to where the point ends between the upper and the lower, okay, that's your length, okay? So right now it was like at 46 inches, so let's say it's somewhere in here, okay? So if we lowered that down to, if we lowered the lower control arm bolt down another inch, it's gonna bring my instant center shorter, okay? So now what does that do? The shorter you make your instant center, so if you take your instant center and go from way out here to here, it makes it more violent, okay? It's gonna separate more violently the shorter you get. The longer you get, it's gonna be more of a gradual separation, okay? So if you get something that's like hitting the tire really hard and then it unloads, your instant center may be too short, okay? So I think where we have it set right now is pretty good at 46 inches. So I think that's what it was. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember the numbers, but you can go back, rewind the video and you can see what the calculator was telling us. So yeah, and as long as you're above your line, your instant center line, which is, or your center of gravity line, which is the top of this tire down to the bottom of this tire, as long as you're above this, it doesn't matter if you're, forward or back. All that forward or back does is changes how violently it hits the tire. Okay, so, if it, like I said, if it's hitting the tire really hard, and you might want to move your center out a little bit further this way, which we can accomplish that a couple ways. So I could keep the instant center at the 120% that I have it at now, and I can raise the upper a little bit, okay, and lower the bottom, the lower control arm, and raise the upper, which would just do the same thing, okay? And all it would do is move the point out further, okay? But it would give me the same anti-squat as long as you take your measurements, put them in the calculator, and it comes out what you want. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And again, I don't know the exact weight of this car. I'm just guessing. The way I had it set up before was similar to this. And, as you can see from the old videos, it was pretty violent. It would hit the tires pretty hard. This thing did some pretty big wheel stands. And I would definitely like to work on getting this out a little further, so it's more of a gradual separation and not like, hitting the tire, just driving it into the ground, and then after that, you don't have any control over it. Okay. And on this car, I don't really have the best shocks in the world. These are, pretty much the cheapest drag shocks you can get. They're single adjustable. So these shocks are not great at handling the violent separation. So yeah, it is what it is. It's, I would be a lot better with some really good shocks that are valved, specifically for drag radials. They make those, like Team Z makes or has shocks that are specifically valved for drag radials, so you can get that, it slows the separation down and you can really get a handle on it. And you're basically, what you're doing is you're kind of leveraging the rear end when it twists, getting that, using the leverage of the rear end to plant the tire. That's basically all you're doing. So yeah, I have 2 other videos on this subject, but I wanted to go over what I have this set at. The other videos I have basically just goes over the theory, and it's kind of the same thing I'm telling you now, but I wanted to show you guys what the anti-squat percentage is on this car. And the way it sits right now, it's 126%. Okay, and we're gonna try it like that to begin with. And I'm gonna go with -3 degrees pinion angle. And that's the relation between your pinion and the drive shaft. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it. Just wanted to go over that. And I'm not gonna mess with anything up front. I'm gonna leave the front the way I have it. I have it chained down. I don't know, it's on like the third hole in the chain. So I do have some travel up front. There is a decent amount of travel, but the way it's set right now is the same travel it had when it was doing wheel stands. So we may have to chain it down a little bit, depending on, what's going on with the rest of it and how well it's hooking and all that. But that's just, you got to try it. You got to try it out and, take video. You got to take video of, your car when it's leaving. You want a video like in this area right here, so you can see what is happening, with your separation here. And you kind of want both to separate equally. So as this separates, you want that to separate as well at the same time, basically. So what you're doing is you're lifting the whole car. Okay, when you're lifting the whole car, you're putting all the whole weight of the car on your back tire. Okay, so that gives you maximum traction. So, but we had pretty good 60-foot times with this thing with the 2JZ in it. The best 60-foot we had was a 124 60-foot. And you got to remember, it was a 1JZ, as bone stock 1JZ, not making that much power. Maybe, I don't know, at most 600 horsepower maybe. I don't know, maybe less. But I definitely wasn't leaving on 600 horsepower. We were definitely leaving on, I think it was, the most I was leaving on was like 23 pounds of boost. And then it was going up to almost 40 pounds. So we were probably only leaving on 400 or 500 horsepower. But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that. It's a little midweek video. Haven't had a chance to get it to the track yet or a dyno because of the weather. It's just been so hot. I am in contact with a shop down in Clearwater that I may take this to get dyno tuned. And but you know, we'll go over that later on when I get an appointment and all that, and that happens. So anyway, guys, that's gonna do it. Check y'all later.